What's up, boys? So, I finally get to cross this movie off of my list of most anticipated horror films for August. And by the way, I found out that the Penny Lane is Dead is actually dropping on Shudder next Friday. So, we will be able to cross off the entire list, meaning I've reviewed every one of my top anticipated horror movies of August, if you've been following along. But today's movie is in fact Hellcat. And if you're not aware, Hellcat is a road horror film. And if you're not aware, I am a road horror for road horror. The movie follows a young woman who wakes up in the back of an RV and with no recollection of how, where, and when. And the only one keeping her company is a voice coming out of a taxidermy wolf hanging from a wall. The driver is communicating with her through that wolf and letting her know that he is on the way to the hospital because she is in fact infected with something that is very dangerous. So right off the bat, you have a lot of intriguing factors in this movie. This is a first time director, and he's not directed, but he's edited a couple of other things in his filmography, in his IMDb, but he hasn't directed any. This is his first debut. This is his debut. And I love where his head was at. Like, I genuinely love where his head was at. But there are a lot of things in this film that I think, from a viewer's spectrum, from the perspective of my own as a viewer, there's a few things that I feel would have made this film like a hidden sleeper gem in horror for this year, because there's so many like intricate elements that would absolutely make for a sleeper hit, right? You have a woman with an established mystery. Upon her waking up, she doesn't know who the RV belongs to, how she got there, and what this infection is. You don't know who the man in the RV is, and he says he has good intentions, but does he? Does he really? The entire RV acts as a prop, right? So, like, that is your setting. You know, the thing about Bottle House films is that your setting is, in fact, the most important element of it, because you're telling your story through everything else that inhabits this space. And you know, they're cheap to make that way, right? Like, there's a reason a lot of first time directors make movies where it's a bottle house film, because one, it saves the budget like crazy, but two, like, it forces you to be intricate and intentional about every little thing in that room, because it's going to tell your story at some point. It's going to foreshadow something. It's going to be a weapon. It's going to be something that tells you or fills you in on on the history of these characters. Like, Bottle House films are both, you know, they should on premise work, but they're also like very complex. And if you know, even though everything is in this cluttered space, the plot holes are much bigger because you have less to work with. And so, but the mystery is there. You know, they do a really good job of playing with the environment and adding complexity through props throughout the movie, which I think is like one of the biggest, most important things in these kinds of movies. Is you do want to make the RV part of you do want to make the RV, the setting, part of the character. This is the character. There's a lot of great moments where the setting is where the attention should be, or is being driven towards. Like, you know, why is that mug there? There's a reason why. Is that mug hiding something? Why are there needles in the fridge? Like, is that where the infection came from? I mean, this guy is saying that he didn't do anything to her. He's actually trying to help her. Well, why are there needles? What's in there? You know, where are the cameras? Why can he see her? Why does he have an intercom system that he can communicate with her? Like, this feels like, say, like, he found you, right? Let's say that he found you and he saw that you got bitten by an animal with rabies, and just, you know, on the off chance he's completely terrified that you're going to turn into a rabid zombie, then sure, he'll throw you in the back of the RV. But why are there systems in place that make this RV feel, like it was built specifically for containment, even though he's saying he's helping. So there's a lot of great elements of mystery here, and I'll give the movie that. You know, nothing is just there for decoration. It serves a purpose. Then you have the mystery of the driver. Like, who is he? And at some points, you do question the way that he talks, the way that he speaks. You're like, that's evil dialogue, dude. Like, I know an evil person when I hear one because I've seen too many movies. And so you get this sense of dread from what he's saying. And you do get the second act of this movie focuses on the driver. I won't tell you too much in case you decide to watch it. But you do get a lot of context about this person and why he's doing it. And then the third act sort of devolves for me. It doesn't evolve, it devolves into something that kind of lost all of the potential that was set up in the first two acts. As a matter of fact, I think that even though I didn't necessarily enjoy a lot of this movie, I can admire it for being a first-time director who really put his all in, you know, like the budget. Clearly he's stretching as thin as as far out and as thinly as he can. The characters, he is doing what he can to fill these characters with the context of the lives that they've been living before we found them in this predicament. There are elements that involve like very deep layered, there are very deep emotions here that we're exploring, like resentment, regret, longing for that moment where you could kind of change things that ruined past relationships. The problem is that none of it really feels cohesive. At one moment I was like, I feel like this is going to be elevated horror, right? Like, it's not the focus of this isn't going to be the horror element. It's going to be the emotional aspects, as a lot of like low budget horror movies tend to sort of, because, you know, you got to save the budget. You emotions are free, bud. So you gotta go there. But I think in context of this movie, the way that the pieces were introduced to me, I had a hard time latching on to any emotion. I couldn't really correlate what was happening to her to the things that she was feeling outside of this current moment. Like, why are you thinking of these people right now? Aside from like thinking of your parents, because like when we're all gonna die, we're most likely gonna think of the people we love the most. You know, for some of us, it will be parents. For some of you, you'll really resent that carton of milk that they never came back with. Nothing necessarily connects, and I feel like there's definitely two different movies here, where when you feel like they know they're going to stretch the horror elements a little too much because there's nothing to do, nothing to say, then we lean into the emotional part, and I'm like, why is this here? You know, why is this hasn't yet been thread uniform enough for me to understand why we're spending time here? And there's some other stuff. And again, I gotta admire first time directing. Like, I would fucking do this, right? If you're having a flashback, instead of just having a flashback, why not have that character imagine the flashback within the confinements of the space to give a different visual kick, right? Something different for the audience to look at. I would do this. Admittedly, as I would do this, I would also say that it didn't necessarily work. And then when we lean into the horror elements, right, when we finally realize what this infection is, which is telegraphed about 20 minutes in, when we finally realize what this is, it kind of turns into something else, right? Like, I feel like this was trying to be an exploration of folklore and cryptids for a little while, and it was leaning into that hard. There's this broadcast that plays on the radio, or these people have a radio station where they talk about werewolves and they talk about werepeople and they talk about cryptids and all this stuff, and you get a little bit of that, and you're like, I kind of get it. Like, the ambiance is here. Like, you're trying to use this broadcast to filter through a feeling, a sensation. And while it worked when the broadcast was playing, and he also acted, the guy doing the broadcast also acted as a character to the story in a very sort of cool way. He is the guy that's ushering in the plot a little bit more with solutions, because he's the guy that everyone talks to when they see creepy shit in town, and he becomes a part of the story. Like, he becomes the guy who's obsessed with cryptids and shit that has information on them. It was a nice little change of pace from everything that we had already been doing, but I get to another thing that doesn't really go anywhere. And then towards the third act, we introduce this character that we only hear once speak through the broadcast radio. And this character is someone who also is after this young woman for reason. I mean, when he gets introduced, he's like supposed to be a big part of the story, narratively speaking, not in terms of time, because you don't see him much up until the last like 11 minutes. But when he shows up, it kind of just feels like you could have done so much more, because they're alluding that this character has information about this world that we're exploring. Like, he is he is like someone who is trained up and is well versed in this world that we've established, right? Which presumably has a set of rules and a set of mysteries to be solved, questions that he might have answers to. And he just kind of gets watered down to the most basic villain ever, like genuinely Saturday morning cartoon villainy. And it's all to serve this sort of sleight of hand where like you think certain things in the story were the way they were, but they're actually not. And like, I appreciate what the thought process was, but the execution was not executed. Does that make sense? One thing, during that moment where this extra character comes in, there are moments and revelations that happen in a sort of static shot. And I feel like when you're building up to story moments, right? As you're building up to them, the camera is such a huge, because those are your eyeballs, right? That's the way that you're presenting this surprise, this twist. Everything is kind of done through a wide lens, like a wide shot with a static shot. And I'm like, oh, dude, this would have hit so much better if you had like done this shot differently and done a close-up, and the music should have kicked up. It's like there were a couple reveals here where like the music did nothing, the shots did nothing, and I was like, you could have had zest here. This would have been the moment where I would have been like, okay, the movie's not hitting, but this is why you watch this movie. And then again, towards the end, it does this like 2-minute twist where you kind of see it coming. And then when it happens, it involves a creature and effects. And while the effects are cool, the creature less so, the moment less so. Like, it just kind of felt goofy. And considering that the movie was extremely dramatic, it felt like something out of Werewolves Within. And if you've seen that movie, like, you know how unserious but how good it is, right? And that movie just is, but it's consistent throughout the entire film. Like, it gets really good. I really love that movie. But this movie has a moment that belongs in that film, and less so in this movie. And it is like your final moment. And so it fell flat for me in many aspects, like many aspects. There's very few things I enjoyed about this movie, but in like literally in concept, it's fucking brilliant. Like it could have done so much. He really could have done so much. But you know, hey, he made a movie and I didn't. So at the very least, you know, what do I know? I was rooting for this motherfucker hard, okay? Very much, but they all can't be winners. Yeah, I'm really in need for a good horror film. You know, new one. Like Insidious really didn't hit for me. This one certainly didn't hit for me. But today I have an unseen Scream. And if I'm lucky, it's either Buddy or Colony. And as we know, Colony is in my top 3, you know? And I always say it's in my top 3 because Wildwood, Hope, and Colony, these 3 movies are my most anticipated movies of this entire year. They have been since I've seen the trailers. And every day it's like I'm reading the Wildwood book, and it'll, like, when I'm reading, it's like number 1. And then Hope, every time I see the trailer, it's like, that's number 1. And then I watch Colony, or I'd see the trailer for Colony, and I'm like, never mind, that's number 1. And they're just constantly recycled. But what I can say is that these 3 movies have been immovable. They have stayed true in that top 3 for me, for sure. So that's my review for Hellcat. Expect my review for tonight's Unseen Scream tomorrow. And that is all. Thank you guys for showing up. As always, I'll see you at the motherfucking movies.